Well, everybody, here's an important message. There we go. Here's an important message that change is not always pretty. In fact, more often than not, change is ugly. And you can see the beauty in the ugly of it, but this is a message to remind us all that change is not always pretty, it's not always a beautiful thing. And if you really want to change yourself, you have to move yourself. It's like going to the gym. It sucks sometimes. It can be hard. There's resistance. You have to push through it. Now, recently, I've really been moving myself with one of my businesses, getting it off the ground. And now that it's off the ground, sustaining that. And that requires me to change myself. So I'm going to talk in this video specifically in the context of business, but this applies to really anything. Whether you want a new relationship or you're trying to get in shape or lose weight or pick up a new habit or drop a habit or something like that. Like, business is really just an external reflection of what's going on inside. Now, it took me years to understand. One of my mentors told me that early on, and I just thought it was BS. I didn't want to hear it. But now I actually see that that's true. That if your business is chaotic, it's showing you something about what's going on inside you. So change isn't always pretty. For people who think that you can just be a positive thinker and just think your way into having, everything just line up and be perfect, that's not how it works. We live in a physical reality that requires you to take real physical action and move yourself. And this is something that I wish I knew sooner on, earlier in my journey, because I spent way too long wasting my time writing my goals over and over again, writing on my self-image, reading books, and those are all good things. I'm not saying you just have to take action and just beat your head against the wall all day. There's a balance, but it's called integrated thinking and doing. So I encourage you to take a piece of paper and a pen and write down this phrase: I integrate thinking and doing. And that will support you as you keep changing. Because changing requires you to change your mindset for sure, but it also requires you to change the way you do things. And this is what I want to dig deeper into. So for all you positive thinkers, I'm not hating on the positive thinkers, because you do have to be able to think positively. If you're a pessimist and a cynic, you're probably going to be a really shitty business owner. Because how do you forecast when you're just cynical and skeptical of everything? But you have to be pragmatic and realistic and realize that, yes, you need vision, you need to think beyond and how things could be, but you also want to look at what are the potential downfalls and where are your weaknesses, so you can build around that. Now, here's a little more wisdom on change not being pretty. Well, have you ever heard of something called second-order consequence? This changed my perspective. My friend Kian really helped me to hit this one home. Helped me pound it through my thick skull to finally get it into my brain. And really, throughout your whole body. Like, you got to get it to the unconscious, which is who you are, how you show up, your behavior, your mannerisms, and all that. So has anyone here heard of second-order consequences? Now, when I say the word consequence, what comes to your mind? Just what are the first few words? Consequence. For me, for a while, it was like reminding me of when I was a kid and I would misbehave, and you hear an adult or an authority go, if you keep that up, there's going to be a consequence. But in reality, consequence, it doesn't have to be this negatively charged word. Consequence just means in sequence. Like a sequence of events. So all too often, reminding myself of this too, and this is for others out there, that we get so caught up in the first order consequence. And this is like when you want to eat ice cream before you go to bed. It's like, oh, it just feels so good. It tastes so good. I love the ice cream. But the second order consequence is you sleep bad because your body's digesting the food, so you can't actually restore your body. And then there's further on third and fourth order consequences, which is, well, now you're sleep deprived the next day. Now the next day your circadian rhythm's thrown off. Like it's this perpetual series of consequences. So when you can really look at the second order consequences of what you're doing, it's an enlightening experience, meaning you can actually see reality more effectively. Karen says trouble is how she associates consequence. Yeah, big time. But really, people who are really effective at working with reality look at consequence as just, that's how reality works. There's cause and effect. So if I put in this work, back to the title of the video, change isn't always a pretty thing. The first order consequences, sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes you have to wake up early, even if you don't feel like it. Sometimes you have to stay late, or you have to do the things that don't feel good, or you feel emotional and you feel like shitty, like you want to cry, or you're overwhelmed, right? That's the first order consequence. But when you can understand the second and third order consequences after that, that's when everything starts to open up. This is why people go to the gym day after day and it feels horrible and they're sore and they're exhausted, but they still do it because the second and third order consequence is that they actually get stronger. And at a certain point, you're like, oh my God, I broke through. This is so good. But it's ugly for a while. So this message is for those of you who are really right in the mix of it and it ain't that fun and you need a little, reaffirmation to keep going, and that don't let your eyes and your ears deceive you, whereas you see this image of someone who, oh, they're so successful, like that's what it should look like. It's like if you look at what it took Bill Gates to build Microsoft or Jeff Bezos to build Amazon, it is years of dedicated effort that is pretty ugly. At least these are what the books say. I don't know because I wasn't there in the early days of Microsoft, but falling asleep at your computer desk, then waking up and going back to work, like, and some people that's more extreme than you may care to do, but really look at that for yourself of what misconception do you have around change? Do you think that change should be this elegant, beautiful process? Or do you realize that sometimes change is ugly? But it's worth it because that second and third order consequence is something greater than you could even have now. And for all you positive thinkers who think that it can just be, oh, this will be good and it will get even better and even better, you don't know how reality works. I was talking to my friend Adam the other day. Brilliant guy. And there's a lot of context to what I'm saying. I'm not shit talking the positive thinkers. You have to be able to be optimistic about things. But Adam, ever since I met him like 2 or 3 months ago, I was out in California. It was really, really cool to hear how he's applied this in his life. So he was running an e-commerce business and everything got shifted because of coronavirus. And how he immediately went to, like, his whole store got shut down. But then he immediately went to, no, this is going to work out for me. He's like, I have no idea how. And we would talk about it. And then it's like a week later, he calls me. He's like, dude, like next, he's like, his whole business model shifted. Now he's like importing and supplying masks to hospitals. So he actually did make it work out to his advantage. But then he hit the next level, right? Like change isn't always pretty. So now it was like a deal was about to go through and it all fell apart. Then he had to innovate again and find a new business partner. And then it turned into an even better deal, right? But then something else fell apart. So it's like this ever-evolving process where it's not always pretty. If you look at just the short-term first-order consequence, it's not always pretty. It's actually usually really ugly. And it's like, it looks like it's falling apart. But then, and I'll be able to report back in a few days with Adam, but it looks like he's finally now, because he's persisted through it, to actually getting these deals coming through. And the deals are even better than it could have been if he just stayed stuck with his e-commerce business. It's like he pushed himself to go to that next level, next level, next level, next level. So shout out to him for being afraid to go into the, into the front lines and, slay the dragons and all that, because it requires thick skin to do this. And again, this is mostly through the context of business, where I know a lot of people who are my friends are entrepreneurial minded, and we all, frankly, want more money or to create more of an impact. And business is the best way to create more money and create more impact. And for anyone who says, "Oh, I don't need money, I'm good without money," it's like, okay, when you're ready to actually face reality that we need money to get by, because you need money to pay your bills and you need money to put food on the table, then like really start looking at this and really see, where am I willing to change and where am I not willing to change? And then for those of you who are willing to change and want to change and talk more about this and are facing the difficulties and everything like sucks right now, reach out, leave a comment, send me a message, because I'm here to support other people through this. It takes us working together to actually create a better world. It takes us working together because sometimes even in one quick conversation, you see a new angle to your business, and vice versa. Maybe I get something out of it through a new insight, through supporting other people, or maybe you give me some valuable feedback too. So yeah, it's really amazing over time what can happen when you consistently apply yourself. And any sort of get rich quick, instant gratification type thinking is just going to sabotage you. So really be willing to look at, what is it really worth dedicating yourself to? Because it's going to take time for whatever you're doing. But I promise you, when you find the right thing, when you apply yourself, and when you have the awareness that change is not always pretty, you will unlock a whole new level of what's really possible.